Hey there parents and families, my name is Andrew Hoffman. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to cover applying early to college. If you're navigating the college admissions process, you've probably heard terms like early decision, early action, and restrictive early action. What do they mean and how do they impact your students' admissions chances? In today's video, we're going to break that all down for you. We're going to talk about the potential benefits and downsides and whether or not your family should engage in the early process. So let's dive in. First, let's define these terms. A lot of folks do mix these up, and I think it's important to get the definitions out on the table. Early decision, or ED. What I tell students is that this is a binding commitment. If admitted, you will enroll in the fall and you will withdraw all other college applications. We're going to spend most of the video talking about early decision. Early action, or EA. This is a non-binding program, so you can apply early, get your decision early, but you will still have until around May 1st to make that final decision. And then there's restrictive early action, or REA. This is also non-binding. You apply early, get your decision early, can make your decision later on, but there are more restrictions. And so these institutions that offer REA typically tell you that you can't apply early action or early decision to other institutions. There might be an exception for any public institutions in your state that offer early action. Now, each of these plans allow students to submit applications early. That's typically in November, and you usually hear back by mid-December. Now, you might be thinking, why should my student consider applying early to these institutions? And I'm going to break down a couple of the benefits. First, higher acceptance rates. So typically these schools are going to see higher admit rates in early decision compared to regular decision. The other piece here is that a lot of institutions are filling their class about 50, maybe 60% or more with just early applicants, and that's especially true for early decision. Second is peace of mind. So reducing that stress associated with your senior year and applying to college, getting that decision early, whether it's early action or early decision, can be a really good thing. And finally, demonstrated interest. We've talked about this in a few other videos. This is sort of the highest bar of demonstrated interest, saying putting all my eggs in one basket for early decision, or I'm just choosing a couple of early action schools, and that can signal to the institution that you're really serious about attending. So after all of that research, if your student comes up with a first choice school, applying early can be a really effective strategic move. And now for the downsides. Applying early isn't for everyone in every circumstance, so let me break it down for you. So first, the binding commitment. In early decision, your student is effectively locked into one school, and if you want to compare financial aid packages from one school to another, early decision is definitely not for you. Limited time to prepare the application itself. And so if your student wants to polish their essays more, take additional SAT or ACT examinations, maybe boost their grades, they're not going to have the same amount of time as if they applied in regular decision. Restricted options. So if you're applying restricted early action, you may lose out on the opportunity to apply early action to other schools. And there is no comparison shopping for financial aid. So typically what you could possibly do is leverage financial aid packages from one school to the next, talk about merit-based state scholarships or need-based financial aid. You don't have that option in early decision. So before applying early, it's important to weigh these factors carefully. So if your student is considering applying early decision, you'll need to sign the early decision agreement, and here's what that entails. The early decision agreement is an ethically binding document, so you and your student are signing this, as well as the school counselor, and all three parties agree, if admitted, I will enroll in the fall, and I will withdraw my applications from other institutions. Now, breaking an early decision agreement is pretty rare, but it can have pretty significant consequences, so let me break that down for you. Depending on the timing, you could have other college decisions rescinded. So for example, I had a student who applied early decision to my institution. I found out later by a phone call from another admissions officer at another institution that that student was trying to leverage their financial aid we offered an early decision for their regular decision applications. Within the ED agreement, you are agreeing to withdraw your applications. This student kept those applications open, and so we both independently rescinded those college decisions, so that student didn't have options, at least at our two institutions. This can also have some consequences for the high school. So while admission officers probably won't admit this, I think it's reasonable for admission officers to think twice about admitting a student from a school where maybe last year a student withdrew from early decision for maybe unethical reasons. And while none of this is actually legally binding, I say it's ethically binding, right? So a lot of students are applying early decision because they really desperately want to go to that institution. I've seen that throughout my almost 20 years in college admissions. If you are applying early decision, for example, and you're just seeing if you can get admitted, but you're not really serious about attending that institution, you withdraw, you're essentially taking a spot away from another deserving student who really wanted to be at that institution. You may never meet that person, you may never understand sort of the consequences behind the scenes, but we are talking about real people, so there's a lot of ethics that go into this. So under what circumstances can you actually back out of an ED agreement? So perhaps there are really significant emergencies within a family situation. If a parent is diagnosed with cancer, for example, the student really wants to stay close to home, that's a reasonable thing that you can bring to the admissions office. But typically the only reason is because of need-based financial aid. So when I was in admissions, I'd get a lot of questions about merit scholarships and students who wanted to apply early decision but really needed a merit scholarship to make that a financial reality. We always told students, if you're banking on a merit scholarship to attend, you really should not be applying early decision unless it's icing on the cake. Maybe your family is wealthy enough to pay the full cost, but a merit scholarship would be really nice. That could be fine, but if you're really relying on that merit scholarship to attend, you should apply regular decision. But if you're relying on need-based financial aid, and the college meets full demonstrated financial need, that's an important point here, then you should run the net price calculator as a family. If you feel comfortable with those calculations, assuming that you're putting good information in, then by all means consider applying early decision. It should be relatively similar to your official financial aid package. Again, you can't compare financial aid award letters from one school to the next, but it should be adequate aid. Now, if you're admitted early decision and you don't receive adequate aid, take those calculations from the net price calculator, go to the financial aid office and appeal that. Now, there might be some really specific situations that weren't captured in the net price calculator. For example, maybe divorced parents, non-custodial guardianship, step parents, etc. But you should at least take that to the financial aid office and ask those questions. Now, after appealing your financial aid and working with the financial aid office, if you still can't make it financially work, then yes, you can withdraw your application and break the ED agreement. But parents, I'm here to tell you there will be a lot of tears. I always worked with a handful of families every year where this was the case, and it doesn't feel good for anyone. But we really tell you, if you go into it with good faith and you just can't make it work, of course we will withdraw your application and you can move on to other regular decision schools. And I think admission offices just ask students and families to take the early decision process really seriously. You shouldn't be applying early decision just to see if you could get in. You shouldn't keep your applications for regular decision open just to see where you might have gotten in. If you really want to go to that school, just take the process really seriously. Now, a note about early decision 2. There are some institutions that offer more than one round of early decision. Early decision 1 or ED1, early decision 2, ED2. The deadline is right around January 1st, typically for ED2, and you typically will hear back from the institution by mid-February. The same obligations and rules and restrictions, but if you have a student who has a number one choice, apply early decision 1. If you're not admitted or deferred, and you actually do have a number 2 choice, you can strategically apply to another binding program that gives you a bit of a boost in the admissions process. And when I talk about a boost in the admissions process, I'm talking double, maybe triple the admit rates in early decision versus regular decision. However, it's a lot more complicated than that. I actually break down this entire process even further on my website, AskDrHoffman.com, and the Parent's Ultimate Course on College Admissions. There, I sort of go over what I call admissions math, and this is building a diverse class within early decision, as well as considering all of the different types of students. That will give you a sense of whether or not early decision actually gives you sort of that boost that you're expecting. An admit rate or an overall admit rate doesn't really tell you that story. So please go to my website and consider signing up for the Parents course. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned a few things about applying early to college. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel to receive more college admission tips. In the next video, I'm going to cover institutional priorities, or hooks, and how those factor into the admissions process. You can click the link above and take a look at that video now. Good luck, and see you in the next video.